We all know that big AAA games made today are mad expensive. It's the most expensive medium in media history and the most profitable. But what happens when you have a massive budget, sell millions of copies, and still have diminishing returns? Well, to better explain this point is to explain what was learned in a recent Insomniac leak. I don't want to go into the leaks as a whole, but one specific point on what their most recent game cost, Spider-Man 2, which was over $300 million to make, an astonishing amount of money, and tripled the game's first budget, which was only around $80 million or so. Now, even though the game ended up being Sony's fastest selling exclusive ever, the game still hasn't broken even. I'm sure it eventually will, as the first game had long legs as well. Now, the point that I and many other fans are making is that while Spider-Man 2 is 3 times the cost of the first game, are players even recognizing that extra investment? While Spider-Man 2 is bigger than the first game and perhaps, more expansive in terms of its set-piece missions and, its dual heroes and protagonist, it's almost identical to the first game. There's improvements, sure, but people even agree that the facial models don't look as good. Also, large portions of the city have also been carried over. It's a shorter experience overall and has a worse story overall, in my opinion, and yet it's 3 times the cost. How and why? Spider-Man 2 is also a direct sequel that uses a lot of features from the first game. It's not normal to cost this much more. The game feels almost like an expansion rather than like a brand new game. Well, one theory that I have is the studio size. Insomniac has over 400 employees. That's a lot. If you want a comparative to that game in studio size, I present Exhibit A, Sucker Punch's Ghost of Tsushima, a game made by 160 people and cost only around $70 million, and I'd argue is an even better game than both Spider-Man games. Honestly, it feels like the budget was inflated. What I mean by that is the developers might have gotten a pay increase, or the bill to make the game looks like it was inflated because it's a Marvel game. Just like, great value products are cheaper than branded ones. Also, marketing. This is not just a Sony product, but a Marvel one. So the marketing was probably through the roof. Also, data from the recent leak shows that Sony pressured the studio to make budget cuts, laying off employees. I mean, with a studio that size and a game budget as large as that, you really can't blame Sony for it. Also, if games continue to cost as much as this, it's rumored that Sony may even increase the price of games past $70 to anything between, in between 80 to 100. Besides that, with increased development cost poses the risk of even more layoffs in the industry. 2023 was a difficult year for gaming developers. While several, excellent games like Baldur's Gate 3, Alan Wake 2, I know people like Tears of the Kingdom, I didn't, but, it's all considered very successful. It was also full of companies laying off employees. Big names like Unity laid off a total of about 1,100 employees over 4 rounds of layoffs between 2022 and 2023. ByteDance, about 1,000 people. Embracer Group, letting around 950 people go. Companies like BioWare, Riot Games, Take-Two Interactive, CD Projekt Red, Electronic Arts, also diminished, cut off their workforce, showing how widespread the trend is in this industry. Something needs to change in the coming years, or this horrible mistreatment of developers will continue. This is an industry we all love and want to see thrive. We don't want the creators of these games to be mistreated or tossed to the curb at first sign of trouble in a studio. Some of the best games of all time were made with budgets astronomically lower than what games cost today. It's time for publishers and developers to go back to this, or this industry may be in serious jeopardy in the future.